Everybody.
You're rocking with Prince Sports.
What's good, guys? Prince Sports here, giving you that raw, uncut sports stimulus package. Now, check this out, man. Magic Johnson, legendary Hall of Famer. All right, one of the greatest point guards of all time. You know, we gave him his roses and all that good stuff. You know, he was in his bag, and he was talking about how good his Showtime Lakers were. And he said they would beat the 96 Bulls because one of the main reasons is the Bulls were too reliant on Michael Jordan. I repeat again, the Bulls were too reliant on Michael Jordan. Okay? You get me? All right? Now, he's right. I think the Showtime Lakers would have beaten the Chicago Bulls too, especially in the scenario that he talked about. Because he said if you put him in foul trouble, you put Mike in foul trouble, they both out the game. The Lakers still got enough weapons to beat the Chicago Bulls. And you're right. All right? Because Pippen ain't nowhere on the same level as Kareem. Never was, never will be. So that alone is an unstoppable force that the Bulls have no answer for. Okay? Then you don't win the guys like James Worthy and, the Baron Scotts of the world. You know, all of that good stuff, you know? The Lakers just was too much. And the Lakers weren't a super team, but they were just a great team. You know, all those guys developed into great players, you know, for the most part, because they was all drafted on that team, you know. And this just goes to show you, though, how great Michael Jordan was. This adds to my conversation of him being the GOAT, you know, because for that roster to still go off and win championships. And if you look at a lot of teams throughout the history of the NBA, a lot of teams look better on paper than the Chicago Bulls. No question. You know, Celtics look better than the Bulls on paper. You know, there's some teams now admit that they're super teams, you know, they would have looked better on paper, especially now, because they get 3 superstars already over the top. And then you got a bunch of good role players to go around it. I mean, you combine all that together. You combine all your powers together, makes what? A super team. And again, you know, criteria of super teams is basically what you see today. You know, it's not you can't develop a super team. You know, a team becomes great over time. They become great over time. You know, that's all in-house stuff. That's your problem that you couldn't stop them. You know, but that just goes to show you that we respect and appreciate what Mike did even more. Because you mean to tell me you won 6 championships with only one All-Star by your side? You didn't need multiple All-Stars? No disrespect to the guys like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, because they weren't on super teams. Like I said, you know, they all were drafted to those teams and became great. You know, so that's no knock to them winning and becoming champions. But yeah, I gotta agree with Magic. I think the 86 Bulls, the 80s Lakers, Showtime Lakers, would have beaten the Chicago Bulls. You know, probably any iteration of the Chicago Bulls, whether it's the early 90s one or rather it's the late 90s one. Now, the early 90s version of the Chicago Bulls was even more impressive to win 3 championships with, you know, because that team didn't have a Dennis Rodman. And even when you had Dennis Rodman on the Chicago Bulls, you know, he still was a role player. You know, he wasn't a superstar. That's for, definitely not true. You know, all-star. You know, you could be a great rebounder and a great defensive player. That doesn't mean you're going to be an all-star, you know. And there have been great rebounders and defensive players that have been all-stars. So you don't need to be a great scorer, neither to be an all-star. But Dennis Rodman was neither. He was a great role player, especially at that point in his career, because no team wanted him. You know, he was on the verge of being kicked out the NBA to be exact. You know, that's just real facts. You know, he was catching beef with a lot of teams. San Antonio Spurs didn't want him. You know, it is what it is. But nevertheless, man, I agree with Magic Johnson. You know, you're onto something right here, man. You know, I think the 80 Showtime Lakers would have beaten the Bulls, no doubt. Prince Sports out. Peace.